All right. Hi, everyone. This is going to be a swap cast. This is obviously my Mindgasm's YouTube channel, but we're doing this as part two of the mixed mental arts chat that we were doing on The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is the first book in his Wheel of Time series. And Dusty was having technical difficulties, so we're going to do it on my channel because I can use a laptop and it won't stop and it won't keep kicking us out of the room and ending the call and stuff. So we're going to do it this way. So, do you want to sort of pick up where you left off at the start there, Dusty?
Yeah, so last week we ended the discussion um, at an event that happened in the book where the Emmons Fielders arrive at their first quote unquote big city, which is not really that big. It's just a little town with a wooden wall surrounding it, and it did have a gate guard. So they're like, "Oh wow, this is a city! Oh wow!" So they arrive at the city. They visit an inn and tavern, and during the night, they are accosted by a murderer, specifically Rand, while he goes out and gets a glass of milk. Um, once they once once they basically are found by this murderer, they know that they have to get out of there immediately because they're going to call upon Trollocs to invade the town, and that's not going to be any good for anybody. So they go into the night and flee. And when they get to the gate, they they have to kind of finagle their way out because they run into some white cloaks. White Cloaks do recognize Rand and Matt as two people who had played a trick on them, or at least laughed at them for getting mud on their clothes. And these, I think Bornhold declares these people dark friends, both Matt and Rand, and to get them out quickly, Moraine performs an illusion that turns her into a giant, basically. And of course, the White Cloaks, knowing this is a use of the one power, and White Cloaks absolutely hate, loathe the Aes Sedai, and think that they're all dark friends. They, this is actually a diversion for them to get away. So while these White Cloaks are stunned by this craziness, the group flees, and they get a good distance between them and the town. Um, But as they're fleeing the town, they do notice that there is a fire in the town. They do suspect that the fire is the inn that they just escaped from. Um, and I believe Nynaeve is with them at this point, and her and Moraine kind of get into an argument about what should be done. And at this point, Moraine's just telling Nynaeve like, "There's not much we can do without putting the lives of the Emmons Fielders in danger. And what she has to do, at most, she can help fund them to rebuild the tavern."
Right.
All right, yeah. So they do escape. They're traveling for quite a bit, and then I know Lan goes out on scouting parties away from the group to make sure that they're not being followed. In one instance, I believe he finds a Murdral and a fist of Trollocs, or maybe even more, and he alerts the group. Um, and they do believe that they're being followed. And as they're running away, they start hearing horns from the Trolloc groups closing in on them, getting closer and closer. And then eventually, which is pretty nuts, um, because the group of image builders isn't very big.
No.
It's a small group, and these fists of Trollocs. And if we're thinking about a fist is 100 Trollocs,
Oh, I
and
didn't realize that.
yeah, and each each fist of Trollocs is led by a Murdral, so that's one Murdral to 100 Trollocs, and I believe there's five of them total. So they
Five Murdral?
for five Murdral, five fists, so
Oh, so
500
500
Trollocs.
Trollocs. Okay.
Yeah. So eventually the Trollocs actually catch up to them, and a battle ensues. I believe the only reason any of them are alive is because their orders are not to kill them. It seems like their orders are to capture them. So if we're talking about Matt, Perrin, and Rand, the Trollocs are not ordered to kill them, and I know they're armed with these catchpoles in order to kind of capture them. As for Moraine and Land and the others that are in the group, I don't believe there are any orders for them to be spared. But they do survive this battle relatively unscathed. Um, the way that they handle this army is just Moraine just channels an immense amount of the one power. First, I believe she creates an earthquake that knocks all the Trollocs down. For some reason, the earthquake does not affect the Murdral at all. I'm not sure if this has something to do with like their cloaks. You know how the Murdral's cloaks don't move in the wind. Maybe
Yeah.
it's somehow connected to that. But this earthquake does not hinder them at all. Um, and upon escaping, I think Land does take down a Murdral. And when you kill a Murdral, all of his Trollocs die.
Oh, I didn't
Which
remember
is
that
kind of,
either.
yeah, so a Murdral relationship is very similar to Trollocs, is very similar to like a warder bond.
Yeah,
You
that's
know
what I
how
was
like
just thinking. Yeah.
so if one of them dies, the other may die. I know there's a way around to not die from one or the other dying, and they who are connected to a warder bond. But I think there's just very similar mechanics behind that. But anyway,
Yeah,
Moraine
they're
creates this giant wall of fire that just she puts it on one side of the group in between them and the Trollocs, which allows them to escape. Their escape options are very narrow. I believe I don't remember who it was who objected to Shadar Logoth, as I know both Moraine and Lan argued about whether they should go to Shadar Logoth or not. And I believe Lan was pro Shadar Logoth and Moraine was anti Shadar Logoth.
I don't remember.
I think that's the case. I'm not sure, but I think Moraine would be more wary of Shadar Logoth than Lan.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't want to hog out too much stuff. What can you explain to everybody what is Shadar Logoth?
That's the place that was that's sort of like been tainted by the Dark One, and it's places where Trollocs and Murdral go. And is it also, am I remembering correctly that it's been tainted by the Dark One when Luz Theron, who was the last dragon, when he was corrupted by the Dark One and he murdered his whole family, or am I confusing that with a different place?
Yeah, you might be. So
Okay.
Shadar Logoth is very special. It's special in a way that it's evil, but it's not evil that comes from the Dark One. It's a different type of evil. It's like an evil completely constructed by men.
So it's not like
Whereas
the Blight.
no, not at all. It just looks like an abandoned city, pretty much. But Shadar Logoth is a fallen. It was a city that fell during the Trolloc Wars, which I think happened 2,000 years before the events in the book. So what happened was this city got completely corrupted by evil, an evil force that was created from the hearts of men. So it's not an evil from the dark one, so to speak. It's like this whole new kind of evil that even the dark one is afraid of. Like
Oh,
Trolloc and Murdral are actually afraid of going into Shadar Logoth.
oh, okay. And then also that's like if you take anything from that place, or if you are given anything, you get corrupted by that evil power, right? Like what we find out happens with Matt.
Well, if you're given anything specifically by Mordeath or Mordath,
Oh, okay.
which is like if we go into the story of Shadow Logoth, like the person named who was Mordath, he was a advisor to the king of Shadow Logoth, but he was actually a very evil man, and um he corrupted the king and the royalty, and this caused the downfall of that city. So in that case, um, yeah, there's definitely it's definitely an evil set apart from the dark one. Just kind of
Okay.
like how the evil in the ways is set apart from the dark one. But yeah, that's uh that's the weirdness of Shadow Logoth. It's its own thing. That's not part of the whole creator and dark one dynamic. It's its own evil.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, they take refuge in this place, which is not a very good place to take refuge, but Moraine had a plan to keep them safe. Unfortunately, because of Matt's curiosity, this plan doesn't quite hold up. Um, because Matt's always kind of mischievous and curious, he wants to explore the city. They figure, oh, it's not dangerous. Moraine said that Trollocs and Murdral won't enter the city. So how bad could it be?
Yeah, he's
Well, it turns
stubborn.
out, yeah, it turns out it's pretty bad. Um, so while they're walking around, they come across a man standing in the doorway who asks them for some help. He's kind of dressed in an aristocratic manner. Um, and he's dressed strangely. It's like a style that they don't recognize. Of course, it's not. It's from a style that no longer exists because he is Mordeath, the same person that we described earlier.
Oh, you got cut off for like 5 seconds there.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, the Mordeath is the person that they encounter. And what do you remember about this Mordeath character, Andrew?
Well, that he's trying to like he doesn't seem like an evil person at first. Like it's clear once you know who he is that he's like trying to coerce them, and he's talking about how isn't he talking about how there's treasure and trying to get them to take some of the treasure, and he's trying to get them to take some of it.
Yeah, because one of the dynamics in play here is that the evil of Shadar Logoth is contained within Shadar Logoth.
Right.
So, in order to spread that evil, you have to take a tainted object beyond the walls of Shadar Logoth. So
And
his
then it,
very purpose is to have them take a tainted piece of treasure that's tainted by the evil of Shadow Logoth. Like that is his whole goal, is
yeah,
to get them to
Shadar
take his treasure.
Shadar Logos taint, not the Dark One's taint.
Yes. So
And
yeah, what happens is they get led down to a treasure room and they're kind of blown back by, oh wow, look at all this treasure. It's crazy. Um, and then Rand takes a look at Mordeith and he has no fucking shadow. And he's like, what the hell? You have no shadow. And then Mordeith starts to morph and grow and definitely starts using some type of supernatural powers. This freaks everybody out. And I don't remember if, I think out of all three of the boys, Matt was the only one that was unarmed. So he grabbed the closest thing he next to him, which was like this ruby dagger from a treasure pile,
yeah,
because he wanted to defend himself against them. What
right.
ends up happening is Mordeith kind of fizzles away into like a mist, and they all escape. Um, and they eventually get back to camp. Moraine is very much worried about what's going on, and basically tells them, this place, the only reason we're safe here is because I've created a ward so that we can't be touched by the evil of this place. And then you guys are going off and just doing what you want.
And she asked them specifically, did anyone give you something? And they sort of do that Aes Sedai thing where they tell you the truth, but they sort of circumnavigate around it because they do that Aes Sedai thing where they never tell a lie, but they don't necessarily exactly tell you the full truth that they want you to hear. So Matt basically does that so he can keep his dagger, right?
Yeah, so Matt takes the dagger. He conceals that from everybody. Actually, nobody knows at this point that he's taken the dagger. And technically, what he says is true. Mordeith didn't give it to him, he stole it.
Yeah,
But it really doesn't make a difference. It's an item that's tainted with the evil of Mordeith and Mashadar. So what ends up happening, Land comes out from scouting and he says, there's Trollocs and Murdral in the city. They're combing the area. And from their current path, it looks like they're going to come across our camp. So we have to get out of here. They break down camp, get the hell out. And as they start leaving, we see Mashadar. And Andrew, could you describe Mashadar for me?
I honestly don't
You don't
remember the
remember?
description of him that much.
So
There's,
all Mashadar is just like this evil mist, like that is the evil essence of Shadow Lorgoth. It's like the physical embodiment of it. I know that this is not the first or last time that we see this evil cloud monster, I guess, like a smoke monster from. Think of it as a smoke monster from Lost.
oh yeah, yeah, that's a
That's
good description.
basically what it is.
Is that similar
Um,
to is that the same thing or is it just similar to um the the dark wind that we witness later?
yeah, that's a little different. That
Okay.
one is different. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But it's a weird thing. That thing, and we're talking about Machin Shin. That's another different type of evil.
Right.
So, but that evil is fully contained within the waves. It cannot really escape.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, so Mashadar is this smoke monster that if you touch it, you death. Instant death if you touch this stuff. So the mist starts flowing through Shadar Logoth, and at one point in time, a tendril of mist splits the group up. So the group gets split. Also, at the same time, they're being pursued by Trollocs. The Trollocs have actually been alerted to their location, and they're actively pursuing them at this point. This is where we see the group get split up, and we start to see more focus on certain characters and certain character arcs and development.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is when we see a split up between um, we get Perrin and Egwene. They get split up into one group. We have Matt, Rand, and Tom. They get split off into another group. And lastly, you get Moraine, Lan, and then Nynaeve. So we get three groups that get split because of this event. So they all leave Shadar Logoth and they're all split and they all have different paths now. They do converge later on, but now the
Good.
it's
Mhm. You still there?
where it gets complex, doesn't it?
Oh, you got cut off for like 10 seconds there.
Oh, oh yeah, this is where the story starts getting a little bit more complex.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, do you remember what happens to Aaron and Egwene?
Um, I know they're traveling for a little bit, right? They're sort of traveling for a little bit before they come across. Oh, I forget what the name.
Elias?
Yeah, Elias, right? Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's with
Mhm.
the Wolf brothers, and then that's where Perrin's sort of character arc starts, because he starts sort of experiencing these feelings of like sensing what the wolves are feeling with the Wolf brothers, and like I guess the Wolf brothers are kind of, it's like people who the he explain I guess, oh yeah, he explains when he first sees Elias, right, that he can see his yellow eyes, which
Mhm.
and then when Rand first sees them later, he first no when Rand first sees Perrin later, he says he thinks that Perrin's eyes look like a wolf, but that hasn't happened yet. He's starting to like experience the what it's like to be a wolf brother, and then he eventually goes into the wolf dream at one point, right? I think, I think he's still, is he still having Balzamon sort of invade his dreams at this point too?
Yeah, so let me go ahead and explain a little bit. Up until this point, all three of the boys were experiencing identical nightmares.
Right.
Once Perrin acquires the ability to enter the wolf dream, the wolves actually stand to protect him in his dream from Baalzamon. So at that point, only Matt and Rands are experiencing the nightmares since Perrin essentially becomes protected in his dreams from the wolves. But yeah, they do meet up Elias. Elias basically tells Perrin that, oh, the wolves tell me that they can talk to you. You can speak to wolves. Perrin is just totally, uh, I guess you would say, he doesn't believe him at all. He's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Complete BS. But even at the same time, he starts to get these little inklings that, oh, I can feel that there are wolves to the east of us that are thinking about hunting or something like that. He doesn't quite know what he's experiencing. Elias does, but Perrin does not. The wolves know what he's experiencing, but Perrin does not know. He's just skeptical about Elias's claim that Perrin is a wolf brother.
Yeah.
But
Or
yes, they meet
they're
Elias. They were starving because I guess they weren't doing very good at hunting.
yeah.
And Elias offers them some rabbit. He cooks up. I guess there were six rabbits, so I guess they all got two apiece. That's what I'm guessing. And they just chat, and they tell him a lie. The funny thing is they start lying to Elias,
Yeah.
and the
They have
wolves
that
are like bullshit detectors.
they have that they have that they tell that like prearranged story that they were gonna say, right? And then yeah, you reminded me. I was reminded of what you just mentioned too from that because they talked about that in those Wheel of Time spoilers episodes that Elias says something like, "Oh, that sounds interesting," but they say you're full of shit, basically.
Well, I have a theory. I think Elias knows. I don't know why he says the wolves say that he is. Because if you remember, like in the books, it, like Perrin can smell deception. He can knows
Yeah,
when someone's deceiving him. So I'm guessing Elias pretty much has that same ability to smell emotions and to smell if someone is deceiving him. So maybe it's either Elias is weaker in the ability or he's just, I don't know. He just says that he relies maybe on the wolves to tell him that they're bullshitting. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
that's an interesting point. I don't. It's hard to tell like whether the wolves are telling him what they sense or whether like you said maybe he sensed it but he's saying the wolves sensed it, or maybe both of them sensed it, or maybe there's some sort of combination, or maybe like you said parents powers are more powerful. But and that's a plausible theory too, because it's like um, Matt, Perrin, and Rand were all potentially going to be the Dragon Reborn, right? And it ends up being the case that like all of the Emmons Fielders, including Egwene and Nynaeve, end up being like more powerful than almost anyone in the world since the Age of Legends, right? I think so. That would make sense for Perrin too. It's interesting, like um is when you listen to those Wheel of Time spoilers episodes too, about how all of the theories and speculation that people get into about the series, about stuff that Robert Jordan leaves ambiguous.
yeah, because this theory I have wasn't even discussed in Will of Time spoilers. I just thought of it right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was like, well, if Perrin could smell fear and deception, shouldn't Elias too? But I know
Yeah.
he says that the wolves told him that he's lying. It wasn't from his own perception that he said that he was lying.
I
I don't
wonder if
know if
maybe he could let maybe if he's lying about that, one of the reasons could be that he's trying to like coerce
enforce.
Perrin. Yeah, like
Yeah, he's trying to
coerce
enforce the
Perrin.
idea that the
Yeah.
wolves talk to
Yeah, because
him.
just be like, hey, they could talk to you too, maybe.
Maybe. That is certainly hard to say because we don't know that motivation and we can only theorize about it. I think that's
Yeah,
what's cool about the book is that there's so many unanswered questions that allows for these theories.
yeah,
But anyway, as we get past Elias tells them that on their current path, they would have actually traveled to the Dragon Wall without saying a soul. So, so because I guess they were trying to, they told him they were trying to get to Kalen, and they're like, "Oh, you guys on your path, you're about 100 miles north, the trajectory you're going." So he agrees to travel with them and kind of guide them for a time. Upon their travels, they do come upon some Tuathalan tinkers, and what do you know of this interaction?
No, this is another thing among many things that I don't really remember the details of too well. There's so much like it seems even though it is a really short period of time, the book is so long that it seems like so long ago from when I just literally finished the book earlier today from what happened that I remember like the main things and like little random details like we were just talking about, especially if they've gone over them in those
Mhm.
Wheel of Time episodes. But there are lots of little things like this that I don't really remember the details of that much.
Yeah, because I'm gonna avoid talking about the other groups right now because I just want
Sure,
to complete each group's arc as they reunite because
that's a
it'll
good
be
idea.
confusing for me to like switch between them.
Yeah.
So we're gonna stick with Egwene and Perrin for a while, and we'll have to talk about Moraine's group because of their interaction. But yeah, they get connected with the Tuathalan. Well, their first thing is they get met by these three wolfhounds who are trained in the way of the leaf, so their bark is louder than their bite, which means that they sound vicious, but they've never hurt anybody.
Oh, right. They're pacifists, right?
Yeah, so the Tuathalan are like ultimate pacifists,
Yeah.
like of the craziest order. Like they're not
Wasn't it
allowed.
Wasn't there one part too where Perrin's asking, I think it's Elias about that, and he says something like "What if someone is trying to kill you and they're about to kill you?" And then he says something like, "Even if someone kills you, you should let them kill you rather than causing harm to someone."
Yeah, that's when he's talking to the Seeker, which is like the leader of the Tinkers. When he tries to explain like what the way of the leaf philosophy is,
Okay.
and they say like even I think fighting back or something that can cause harm. It was like it was weird. Like their philosophy is certainly strange.
Yeah.
But I know they do actually have quite a good time at this camp.
Yeah.
There's a lot of merrymaking, dancing, feasting. Um, I think Egwene kind of gets somewhat smitten by Aram,
Yep.
which is a young tinker boy um, who's around Egwene's age. And then
And
Perrin,
then she still gets all jealous later when she's hearing about Rand's attention from Elaine and like the farmer's daughter and stuff like that.
yeah, they do squabble quite a bit in the book.
Yeah,
Like Egwene and Rand squabble a lot.
yeah,
They do bicker at each other, but yeah, and then so there's that, and then the parent gets embarrassed by like the Tuathalan, I guess. I guess they're kind of like belly dancing,
yeah,
and it seems like extremely risque for the sensibilities of two riversmen.
yeah,
So he's very he starts blushing, and I think when that happens, they see him as a mark, so they start targeting him with the dances.
yeah. It's it's funny how embarrassed he is about that.
Yeah, so I think after a few days, Elias and the Seeker have like some feeling that something bad is coming. So they part ways. And what they sense was the Ravens. Do you remember the Ravens.
Um, I don't remember this specific interaction, but I remember that they're spies for the Dark One, right?
Yeah, so this interaction is interesting because you don't see it that often. But what happens is these murders of crows go around killing everything that moves. I don't know if you've have you ever played the first Gears of War?
Yeah.
Do you remember that level? Like, if you stepped out of the dark, you just got fucked over by these swarms of like bats or something.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
That's what this part of the book reminds me of. So
Oh,
these crows just go. Like, I know the first thing that they see is they watch a fox. Is one, they don't want to be seen by these ravens because they're messengers of the Dark One. They're basically his scouts and spies. The other reason they don't want to be found is because these things will kill them.
right,
In large numbers, they're like flying clouds of piranhas, it seems like. So they killed a fox. Um, the ravens also attacked the wolves that were helping them. And there's a point in time where they have to travel fast to outpace this flock of crows that's besetting them.
right,
And in the back of their minds, they're like, "Oh man." Well, we're at the perspective of Perrin because there's different perspectives. If we knew the perspective of Elias, we knew that they were pretty much safe as long as they kept their pace, but not Perrin. He doesn't
right,
know about the setting. He doesn't know what the setting does to the Dark One's eyes and ears. So
right,
all this time, Perrin is thinking, "There's no way that we're escaping them," and he doesn't want Egwene to befall the fate that he saw the fox getting ripped to pieces by hundreds and hundreds of crows. So he begins to contemplate whether ending her life with his axe would be better than letting her befall the fate of the fox. This becomes like a huge moral quandary for Perrin for some time until they do cross the steading. And Elias was like, "Oh, we're in the steading. We're safe. They're not going to follow us." So there we go. Oh,
right.
we're safe. And then, hold on a second. That was weird.
What?
Toilet flush. Did you hear that?
Yeah, they're a ghost.
Yeah, it's weird. I was walking by an empty bathroom and a toilet flush. It's like, Jesus, who's in there? I'm
Is it
like
an
an
automatic?
abandoned floor.
Is it an
Yeah,
automatic flusher?
it is, but it's not supposed to do that when no one's around.
Okay.
Weird. All
Maybe
right, so
there's
they get in the
uh
steading.
maybe there's a
Yeah,
rat spying for the Dark One in there.
maybe. God damn it. Have to be on the floor under construction.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, they get to the steading. They see a statue of Arthur Hotwing's eye or something like that, and they talk about Arthur Hotwing's empire for a little bit. Um, and this place has a nice, cool drink of water. They get refreshed, and then some white cloaks come stomping in the area. They disperse. They get they get I know they get separated from Elias. So it's just Egwene, Perrin, and Bella. What happens is eventually the White Cloaks do catch up with Perrin. A bunch of White Cloaks have been killed by wolves in the area that were helping. And when they confront Perrin, Perrin kills two White Cloaks. He gets hit on the head. And next scene, is he gets put in a white cloak camp and gets put to the question, I guess. But I think we could stop there because there's a converging path.
Right.
So we'll go back to what happened to Moraine, Lan, and Nynaeve's group after they fled from Shadow Logoth. So technically, Nynaeve actually gets split up from everybody by herself. She's the only one that goes solo from Shadow Logoth. So what happens is we follow Nynaeve for a while, and because Nynaeve is like an expert tracker, she actually finds Lan and Moraine discussing something. I don't quite remember what they were discussing, but she finds them. They discuss about who they have a discussion about who they're going to save. Um, Nynaeve is very, very much worried about Egwene's safety. Moraine basically tells Nynaeve that she gave the three boys coins in order to track them. And that Perrin's coin, I think at this point, Perrin still has his coin, so he's the only trackable person. But then Rand and Matt's coins, they were trackable up to the river and then they vanished.
Okay.
So Moraine's plan is okay, as long as Perrin has a coin, we don't have to worry about him, as we can always track him later. Let's go after the boys that lost their coins, who we think are still alive, which is Matt and Rand, who is also accompanied by Tom. Eventually, Moraine does convince Nynaeve that her path of action is the correct path, that they should go after Matt, and that Matt and Rand, and that Nynaeve, or that Egwene is a big girl who could probably take care of herself.
Right.
So they do start tracking. Um, they start tracking Perrin, actually, because what happens is I forgot why they start tracking Perrin instead. Um,
Now, Egwene got separated from Perrin.
no, no, Egwene always stayed with Perrin.
Okay.
I think what happened was
Yeah,
they
I didn't.
suspected that Matt and Rand, that they weren't going to find them um, immediately, that they would probably meet up with them further along. They
Yeah.
suspected that they were traveling by boat, so that it was going to be very difficult for them to track them if they're trying to chase a boat. So they do focus their efforts on going with Perrin because at one point, um, Moraine notices that she can no longer track Perrin. Temporarily, Dane Bornhold takes Perrin's belongings, which severs that connection.
Oh, right.
So once Perrin gets online again, they decide to go after him, which is good because when Perrin's captured, he's actually Egwene and Perrin are the most in trouble at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so they get captured, and they basically the White Cloaks put them on a death march. I'm not talking about Moraine's group. We're talking about Perrin's group.
Yeah,
They get
Brain
marched
and
along. Perrin is beaten nightly.
yeah,
He's in pretty bad shape.
and they put a rope around his neck and have him be dragged, well, not be dragged, but walk behind a horse, right?
Yeah, they're on foot.
Yeah.
So they are in some dire straits. One night, because there's two main white cloaks that they talk about here. One is Bornhold, Jeffram. Some people say Geofram,
Oh yeah?
because that's what it looks like in the book.
Yeah,
Geofram. Anyways, Jeffram Bornhold, he's a Tarabonner. You can tell by his accent. I don't know.
right.
Are you able to pick out where people are from in the books by their accents?
No, not really.
Okay. People who say yes a lot at the end of sentences are from Terrebonne.
Oh, okay.
He is definitely from Terrebonne. So anyway, um, what happens is Child Bayar, which is this really sadistic white cloak, he knows that they're supposed to be heading on the Camelin to follow the false dragon. And they don't believe that dragging along Egwene and Perrin is going to get them there in time. So he concocts a plan. He wants to convince Perrin to try to escape so that he can kill him and they can get on with their journey to Camelin. Um, Jeff from Bornhold is very much a by the book guy. So he's taking them captive, and he knows that by the book he has to take them in and have them put to the question by, I guess, the questioners. And he's not willing to, you know, diverge from that plan, from what he's really supposed to do. Child Buyer has different sensibilities. He just wants to kill them
Yep.
and get on with it. So this is where we have a point of convergence. Buyer takes Perrin out, tells him, "Hey, we'll be willing to look the other way if you just try to escape." Of course, it's bullshit. At the same time, Moraine, Nynaeve, and Lan have located the White Cloak camp that they're currently stationed at. And Nynaeve gets tasked with helping to create a diversion. They know, well, Lan and Moraine knows that they got to scatter the horses so they can't be followed when they rescue Perrin. So what Nynaeve does, she's tasked with sneaking into the camp and cutting the lines to the horses. Well, not completely cutting them, but cutting them enough so that the horses are able to break free if they're jostled in some form or fashion.
Right.
Um, so what happens is she cuts the horse lines. It's very much debatable whether she summons lightning or Moraine. Um, so a lot of people do believe that it's Moraine or Nynaeve that does it.
Oh, really? I didn't
Um,
realize that.
yeah, and some think it's Moraine. It's not definitive um, because sometimes people can channel in a time of need, and at the very point that the lightning was summoned, Nynaeve was very much in a time of need because she was going to be discovered.
Right. Oh, okay.
So at this point in time, also, Lan sneaks in, beats up a bunch of white cloaks, beats up Child Byar, knocks him out,
And
and
he
they go
did
at
like
Perrin.
he dispatches a whole bunch of them without even drawing his sword, right?
Yeah, he's just using fists and feet,
Yeah.
like like just fists and feet, so no swords, no weapons. He's just going out there like Batman and beating a bunch of people up
Yeah.
at night. He's basically coming in like Batman at night. No one can see him. He's stealthing a bunch of people, taking out a bunch of guards, takes out Child Buyer. The diversion is lightning strikes. Those the horses get startled. They break their lines. They disperse. Um, they find Bella, and Bella is the horse, one of the horses, one of the few horses that are alive from the beginning to the end of the book.
Yeah,
And some people call Bella a main character. So
yeah.
they flee, they get out of there, they get the hell out of Dodge, they get rescued. Everyone's like, hell yeah, great, awesome. All right, so I'm actually gonna transition over to the Matt and Rand arc and Tom.
Right.
So what can you tell me about those three? How do they start their escape from Shadow Lugoff?
Well, huh. I honestly don't
Man, you
remember.
just read the book,
Yeah,
man.
I
How long
know.
ago did you read it?
What this chapter was last week at some point. I just don't remember
You
in
read it
what
last
order.
week.
I read this chapter last week. Yeah. Um
Okay, so
I
okay.
just don't remember the sequence of events. I
The
remember like
sequences of you remember the events, you don't know the
yeah,
sequence of events. Okay,
yeah,
so the
like I don't
sequence
remember
here.
like I don't remember like when they get separated from Tom, but I remember I remember them going to Andor and stuff like that, and then them getting attacked by a dark friend in two different places.
Yeah, we're gonna forget all about everybody else now because the convergence point is in Camelin,
Right.
and a lot of shit happens to Matt and Rand between Shadar Logoth and Camelin.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the initial escape, um, they escape. They get followed by some Trollocs through some woods. Um, Tom saves their asses by chucking some daggers at some Trollocs and kills them
Oh, and
with
those
like,
are his best
ex-
daggers. Yeah.
yeah, his best daggers. I think I don't know if they were his best. I don't think they were.
Weren't like, isn't that the first time that he does that and he says that they're his best, and then later on he does the same thing and throws them into some Trollocs and he says those are my second
Second
best.
best. I'm having trouble believing that though, because here's why I have trouble believing it. When he gets attacked by the Murdral, there's an implication that the dagger he uses to fight the Murdral is power rot.
Oh.
So if that dagger is power rot, then how are these other two sets of daggers even better than the one he uses to fight the Murdral?
Oh, that's a good question.
So I
Maybe
don't know if he was just like saying that in jest or if that was real because he fights a Murdral with a power rot dagger.
if
I
they were
don't I
more
don't think he would have
powerful,
left that. I don't think he would have left something like that behind.
yeah. And if they are more powerful, that's like it's interesting like why that would be and how much more powerful they are. And is it this time or the next time when he says, oh, those are my second best daggers? It's one of those times, I don't remember which, when he throws them into the Trollocs, but then they like run away and escape, so he couldn't go get them anyway.
Yeah, the first time I think he says his best.
Yeah.
It's really hard because I think there was an update to the book that changed that. Because I know
Oh
there
yeah.
has been updates to the books where they change certain things. I have to take a look at that. I believe he does say that they're his. I don't know if they're his best or second best, but he murders a couple of Trollocs that were following him, and then they start running to the river, and they kind of take a little bit of respite to gather their things together, and they get ambushed by some more Trollocs. They hop on to Bail Domon's ship,
Right.
and some havoc ensues. They do fight the Trollocs off. Rand's actually about to get killed, but he uses the one power to save himself by jostling one of the ship's booms that's connected to the mast, and it swings and it hits the Trolloc, and the Trolloc, and that saves him from getting murdered, basically.
Right. And he doesn't
Um,
realize that he's just channeled.
no, he does not, and we do get information that tells us that he channeled there, and we'll cover that later. Um, so anyway, Gelb, I think, was the guy that was supposed to be watching, and he was asleep when Rand, Tom, and Matt boarded the ship. Um, they pay passage for the ship with the coins that Moraine gave them.
Oh yeah, and Matt and Rand do like offer to pay for it right away, and then after they do that, Tom tells them, I could have just got passage for us by singing them a few songs and telling some stories.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that they basically get free passage, but when Bail Domon pays them back, they're in different denominations of coins.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
So Bail Domon does kill. He keeps the original coins, but he gives them their passage back in different denominations of coins. So Tom was right. They basically would have gotten free passage, and they did get free passage.
Okay.
Yeah, so what happens is they come up with a story as cover for why they were in Shatter Logoth and what they're doing traveling around with this Gleeman. So they're his apprentices, and he actually teaches them some pretty useful skills that they use later on. He teaches Rand how to play the pipe or the flute, and Matt seems to be good at juggling. So they do get some Lehman skills, and as they're posing as Lehman's apprentices. During their ride, not a whole lot goes on, but they do kind of talk about some of the landmarks that they pass by. A notable one, I think, is the Tower of Genji. You don't know it's the Tower of Genji, but at this point, but it appears to be like a skyscraper looking building.
Right, yeah. That's the one that there's in one of those Legendarium episodes, they talk about how that as one of the reasons that the Age of Legends might actually be our own time in the future, because it's one of those things from the modern era that's like a skyscraper is one, and then the like another reference is someone traveling to the moon in the belly of an eagle, which is supposed to be like the space shuttle that was launched in 1969. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
Matt Therese the Healer, which is supposed to be a parallel to Mother Teresa.
Mm-hmm. And there's also Mosk and Merc, the and the Spears of Fire, which is talking about the Cold War and nuclear weapons between
Right.
America and Moscow.
And I think they
But
talk
yeah,
on I think they talk on that episode too about how this it makes sense because I think the Eye of the World came out in 1990, so it was like right at
mhm.
the end of the Cold War.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so there's a lot of allusions that this book actually takes place in a far future timeline on Earth. This is
Yeah,
an interesting take. It's not fully addressed, but Robert Jordan just gives you these little tiny hints
yeah.
that implies that this is like a far future Earth.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's like it's related to that whole theme throughout the series, that this sort of like Buddhist or Hindu theme of there is no beginning or end. There's just an endless cycle of the pattern that repeats itself as the wheel wills, and it just keeps going that way. So
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting.
And I think there's also the trope this is pretty much a fantasy trope that I've. There's a fantasy trope that they're on the river and they see large statues, like bordering like on the edges of the river and tall cliffs. So we're alluding here to Lord of the Rings. I know they have those statues when they're going down the river.
Yeah.
I know the Sword of Shannara also had them, and I was like, oh, there's more Lord of the Rings. Sword of Shannara has a lot of Lord of the Rings allusions in it,
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's
but
what's his name? Alanon, who's like
Al-Anon, yes.
who's like basically Gandalf. Kind of like
Yeah, Al-Anon is angry Gandalf. That's what I like
yeah,
to call
yeah.
it. It's like an angry Gandalf.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of parallels, but yeah, I think that's just how fantasy tropes work. But eventually, by the end of their trip on the ship, well, one thing I'd like to mention too, that if we're going to talk about evidence for Rand channeling, um, during the trip, I think he gets a headache, and that goes away pretty quickly. And then he starts acting erratically. And when I say erratically, he's like hanging out, I think, at the crow's nest on the ship. And he starts doing some crazy flips and acrobatics. And Tom is like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, do you want to die? And he starts going up the mast to see if he can get Rand to calm down. And he ends up flipping off the top of the mast and sliding down a rope or something. And then they're like, what is he doing? And he is like, it's like that's some damn good acrobatics, but Jesus, like
Yeah.
you gotta warn a guy.
Yeah.
And I know giddiness is and irrationality is one of the symptoms of channeling sickness. So that's where we get this because there's two times when it happens. That's one. The other time is when he gets giddy when the white cloaks get their mud, like they get mud splash on him. He knows he's not supposed to laugh at him, but he does anyway.
Yeah.
And the thing
That
about
really
Rand
pisses
and
him
his
off.
yeah, the thing about Rand and his personality, like, seems to be more rational and less mischievous, of course, than Rand.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, than Matt.
Matt.
Matt
Yeah.
doesn't give a shit about anything. He just does what he does. Like
Yeah.
Rand tries to strategize a bit. But anyway, that was one of the symptoms of the channeling sickness. First stop. So they're all going off to White Bridge. White Bridge is this. It's a larger city than Barrelon. Much smaller than Camelin. At White Bridge, there's this bridge structure that was probably created by the One Power. Nobody can figure out exactly how it works. It looks to be made of glass or some type of white material. Looks like it's impossibly able to support heavy weight because it looks like it's made out of. It's described as it being a spider web like um, construction, but it's a bridge.
Right.
So anyway, the boys and Tom get to White Bridge. Gelb gets kicked off the boat. Gelb is the one that was sleeping on the watch when the Trollocs attacked the boat.
Right.
Gelb wants to get back at everybody. He starts starting rumors. Master Domon, or Bail Domon, who's the captain of the ship, he offers them free passage to Ilion if they want to take that, because he very much enjoyed their company. Um, Tom is actually really interested in doing that, and he tries to convince the boys. Rand is very steadfast in wanting to continue on to Tar Valon. What happens is it becomes a bit dangerous for them in Whitebridge. They go to their first inn and they try to get some information. Tom asks around about um, people that they're looking for. He gives them descriptions. And the innkeeper is like, well, you guys better get out of town now. And Tom's like, huh? He's like, yeah, there's been some seedy characters asking around for the particular people that you're calling your friends.
Right.
One of them is a crazy man, just ranting and raving. And the other guy is just this guy in a cloak with a voice like a snake.
Yeah. That's not suspicious at all.
Yeah, right away Rand and the group are like, okay, that's a damn murderer that he's been talking to,
Yeah.
and they figure that the guy's been coming every day to ask about them, so they need to get the hell out of there. Um, so there's also some problems too that's occurring because Gelb is spreading rumors about them, and those rumors are bound to cause some problems. So because of that, they don't believe that they'll be. Well, Tom's plan gets shattered of going with Domon to Ilion because Domon didn't plan to set sail till the next morning, and they didn't have the next morning. So they're
Yeah.
definitely going to have to flee.
Right.
Um, Tom makes himself less conspicuous by taking off his Gleeman's cloak, which is this colorful patchwork thing that if you saw it, it's like going and walking through a city with neon yellow shirt, neon
Yeah.
pink pants. It's like there's no way you can be inconspicuous with a Gleeman's cloak.
Yeah.
It's just really colorful, and he dons just like I think a regular dark brown cloak or something.
His cloak kind of reminds me sometimes of Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings books, but not the movies, when he becomes, oh wait, no, not Gandalf, Saruman, when he starts working for Sauron. He goes from being Sauron the White to Sauron the Many Colored, and he looks like
Mm.
he's got lots of different colors on his dresses, or his dress, not his
Oh,
dress, his
okay.
robes.
Is it kind of like the color changing cloak of the warders, something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Mm.
something like that too. Yeah,
Yeah. So they try to sneak out of the city, and then they see they catch a black cloaked figure whose cloak does not stir in the wind, and they freak the hell out. I guess the problem with is if you stare at a merge, it's like touching an electrical wire. You just kind of get stuck there. And Tom is just screaming at them, "Don't look at him, run!" Um, so what happens is Tom charges the merge and the boys run off. What we do see, like I was said before, is there are what's described is that there are blue flashes of light when Tom comes into contact with the Virgil. Blue flashes of light, what that means is whenever a power wrought weapon comes in contact with a weapon that was forged in Thakandar, blue flashes of light occur. So this is why I think Tom has a power wrought dagger at this point. It's not explicit, but that itself, that description of the blue flashes of light, that indicates that he has one.
right.
Uh-oh. That's what's wrong with these elevators. Well, anyway, um, so what happens is they run off, and this is another separation that occurs. And this is probably one of the more interesting parts of the book when Rand and Matt are on their own. I think out of all the three stories, I've really enjoyed this part of the separation because they were definitely underdogs the whole journey. Um, but we'll get into it. So anyway, they believe Tom is dead. They don't believe anybody can face a Murdral, unless you're maybe Lan and you have like a uh, big ol' swordmaster sword. They figure Tom, okay, Tom's going after a Murdral, he's dead. There's no way he'd survive that. They believe he's dead. Um, but they also have Tom's thing. So they have his harp, his cloak, his Gleeman's cloak, his flute, and they go from town to town, bumming it. Um, I think at this point too, you get to see that the dagger that Matt has is corrupting him. Like he starts becoming suspicious of everybody, and
Yeah.
not is it only corrupting him, but it's corrupting people around him. So they do stop at various little farms and towns along the way. The further along they get, the more suspicious people are of them. One of the notable stops that they make, well, a lot of times they go to inns and try to pay for their stay by performing. Both Matt and Rand have the skills of juggling and flute playing that Tom taught them, so they use that to get by. Um, I think I'm trying to, because they stop at so many different places, I can't remember the names, but I think one of the biggest pivots is the Four Kings. Do you remember if that's the name
I,
of one of the places?
that's one of the places, yeah.
Okay, Four Kings. I believe this is the place where the with the skinny innkeeper, and I think this is like one of the most interesting scenes in the book. That if you try to visualize, you're like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
And I should have. I wish I would have highlighted that and just wrote it out so I could read it directly. But there is this scene where they're negotiating with the skinny innkeeper. They want to trade their talents for a stay at the inn. Innkeeper's trying to lowball them. He says, "Oh, we have a dulcimer player, blah blah blah. We don't need any musicians." I believe he's using that as a strategy to pay them less or do less for them if they were to
Right.
perform. And then what happens is one of the barmaidens steps in and says, "Oh, him? He's always drunk and he's never here on time." Um, without without breaking his gaze, his look with Rand and Matt, he backhands the woman. Like, if you can
Oh yeah.
imagine this: you're having a conversation with somebody walks up and makes a comment, and without looking at that person that walks up, you backhand them. Like
Right.
that's the most gangster thing I could even think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like not looking at somebody and backhanding them and not even looking like throughout the whole interaction, you're not looking at the person that you backhanded.
Yeah.
You're not breaking you're not breaking eye to eye contact with the person that you're talking to in order to backhand somebody. That is crazy. And I wish I would have written a scene like that. It kind of reminds me of my best action scene ever, but we can go into that some other time. Anyway, I was completely astonished by the scene. I was like, Jesus, this guy has some balls. Backhanded one of his employees without even looking at her. Anyway, I think she drops a tray and then she gets docked for breaking
Oh,
whatever.
you got
Uh,
cut off for about 10 seconds there.
oh, sorry about that. Well, I think what I said is eventually, after the backhanding, she drops the tray. She gets docked for the damage caused. Matt and Rand do decide to stay there and perform. Matt, throughout this whole time, they do feel uneasy about the innkeeper, and they also notice this weird dude sitting out in the audience just staring at them. They have this creepy feeling about him, and they kind of recognize him. Um, they believe he came from Whitebridge. I think during the performance, one of them looked out at their wagons and they saw that, oh, this is from Whitebridge. His name is Goad. And they have suspicions of anyone coming from Whitebridge because of what happened at Whitebridge. Like the whole town was in an uproar because of that incident with the merge wall. Well, anyway, they're very suspicious. At the end of the night, they get offered like a crappy back room, and Ren and Matt agree that they do not want to stay there. But I think they got locked into their room, and they wanted to escape somehow. Um, Rand figures, oh, we can escape through the window. While they're formulating this plan, Goad, the guy that was creepily staring at them during the performance, comes up to them and he's talking to them as if they're fellow dark friends. He's like, "Yes, come join us. We're with the Dark Lord, etc., etc." Uh, they're like freaking out. They want nothing to do with dark friends. And then great need, something happens where lightning strikes the inn, and it creates an escape for Matt and Rand. This incident does have some negative effects. One, the lightning actually blinds Matt for a while, so it incapacitates him in that way. The other thing that it has is that this was a result of channeling, so it spurs on some channeling sickness for for Rand. This is another one of the channeling events that happens that confirms that Rand is a channeler of the one power. We don't, you're not explicitly told this at this point in the book, but if you read it once, then you could see that, oh, okay. Yeah, he's definitely a channeler. Um, they escape. They go to a couple other towns. Another town that they go to after that, some dark friend just randomly comes up to them in a tavern, and I think Matt punches him in the face or Rand punches. I'm not sure. Gets punched in the face, and they leave that town. Next town they go to, they offer to do a performance at an inn, and Rand gets sick all of a sudden, and they cancel the performance and they get set up in a barn. And then some noblewoman like lady tries to assassinate them with some dagger that seems to have some type of evil powers. And I thought that dagger was interesting because you don't get to see many weapons like that throughout the book series. Do you remember that scene?
Uh, Only vaguely.
Well, yeah, the dagger seems to she misses stabbing Matt with the dagger, and it embeds itself into a plank. And where it embeds itself, it's smoking, so it's actually burning the wood. It's one of the weird, interesting weapons that we get to see. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
yeah, she tries to stab him.
Yeah, and then it
Um,
and then
they
it it
they
burns
lock
the
her
wall
up.
behind him. Yeah.
Yeah, so he ends up locking her up in the barn and they get the fuck out of there. Next town, they see they're like stalking through the town at night, and they see like some innkeeper dude talking to a black robed figure. Of course, it's a Murdral,
Yeah.
and the Murdral's basically offering a bounty for Matt and Rand, he's accusing them of stealing uh, a Heron Mark sword. So there's also one of the other villagers overhears their conversation. He argues with that innkeeper as well. The guy says, "Oh, I'm going off to Camelin, blah blah blah," And I don't know if Mataran runs out to him, but he's like, "Hey, I heard you're going up the road. Can you help us out?" And he gives them a lift, and he actually drops them off at Gamelin. Um, and during that whole time, he knows that they are the people who are running that the Murdrall is asking for. But he has no love for that innkeeper or the mysterious stranger, and he doesn't really believe their story.
Right.
Not he doesn't believe the Murdrall story.
Yeah.
So here's another convergence point. Caneland. Um, a lot to discuss here. I'll try to get through it pretty quickly. They get to Queen's Blessing Inn, which is somewhere that Tom suggested that they go. The owner of the inn is Master Gill, who was a friend of Tom's. Um, so they're accepted wholeheartedly there. Matt gets sent up to the room. He's not feeling well, and then Rand wants to go relax. He goes down to the library and he meets Loyal. Now, Andrew, who is Loyal?
So he's he's from a steading, right? And he's what is it that he's like 8 feet tall or something like that. He's like gigantic, and he's he's been like other I can't believe the name of his like race is escaping me right now. Is
It
it
starts with a O.
um shit, I don't remember.
It sounds like ogre.
Oh, Ogier. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. And he's huge, and he knows a lot about the world because he's read a lot of books, but he's been in his steading the whole life. So his whole life. So he knows he knows about the world, but only from a long time ago because he hasn't been out into the real world because the steading it sort of seems like it's almost like and going into one of those is like a wormhole that goes into a different reality within the real world, and most ogiers stay there for their entire lives, and if they go too far for too long they start to get weak and they can even die. So he's and he's um like Rand is really surprised when he meets him because he's so fucking huge. Like it says when he's holding a book, it looks tiny in his hand, and he has to sit in a chair meant for two people and stuff like that.
Yes. So ogre, yes, they're a race that live in this world. They live in steadings. A steading is a place that the one power cannot touch. So that it's one power gets nullified within these areas that the Ogier live. Um, Ogier, they look like big people. They have tufted, pointy ears. Some describe them kind of like as cat ears. They have these super long eyebrows. Like imagine someone with a handlebar mustache, except those are eyebrows, like hanging down.
Yeah.
Like imagine a Fu Manchu, but with your eyebrows. Like the end of your eyebrows is just hanging all the way down. They're super tall, and I think they're hairier than people are. I don't think they're quite furry, but they definitely have more hair. So yeah, and they're also very long lived. So when when Rand meets Loyal, he's a young Ogier, but he's actually like 90 years old, and he makes comparisons between him and old Sen Bowie. Do you know who Sen Bowie is, Andrew?
No, I don't remember.
Sen Bowie is the old crotchety dude from Two Rivers. Um, I guess in the first book, he's on the village council, and he's one of the people outside of the inn that wants Moraine out. He's like an old 70-year-old dude. He's kind of crotchety and a curmudgeon. But so yeah, he meets Loyal. They do talk about some things. Loyal does present Rand some stories, specifically stories that are Aiel related, and he expects Rand to know about them because Loyal thinks that Rand is an Aielman, which he actually is, but Rand doesn't know this.
Yeah.
So Loyal is actually correct in calling him an Aielman.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of confusion and some social faux pas that happen there. But they befriend him for some reason. Oh yeah, so another thing that's going on, a big event that's happening in Camelin at this time, is that they're presenting Logain as a false dragon to the Queen. This is kind of like a one in a lifetime event. This is why there's so many people crowding into Camelin at this point in time. So Rand, oh, there goes the toilet again. Rand wants to go see Logain himself also. So while he's on his way to see Logain, he notices this beggar guy is following him. And it's like, oh, that's Pot on Fane again. As he found, I think it was in Baralon that they first came upon Pot on Fane. And they saw that he was kind of nuts. And they found him again, and he was acting crazy. He was trying to get away from him, at least hide from him, because he didn't want to be followed. So he climbs up a wall, and he ends up in the royal garden. So this part of the book, you first meet Elaine, Elaine, Gawain, and Galad, which are Queen Morghase's kids. You get their first interaction. Um, Eventually, Rand gets presented to the Queen, and I think there's some Taviran-ness here that happens that causes him to escape with his head intact.
Yeah.
As I think Rand's Taviran-ness gets him out of trouble here. It seems like normally, if there was some random guy showing up in your garden that's armed with a heron-marked blade, looks like an Aielman, speaks like a Two Rivers person, it's hard to not be suspicious of that person.
Yeah.
of being up to completely no good. And then you have Elida saying that this person is dangerous. Elida being an advisor to Morghese. So all the cards are against Rand, but he escapes this situation with his head intact. I think this tells me the Taviran-ness is working into him being saved in this situation. Like, I think the Taviran-ness caused him to meet Elaine and also caused him to escape. It's like almost like Taviran-ness is plot armor to the nth degree.
Yeah.
It can almost explain it. A lot of the weird coincidental meetings and things in the series.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he heads back to the inn. The group is there. So Perrin, Moraine, Lan, Nynaeve, they all find the inn. And they all have a great and awesome reunion. They all get together, they meet Loyal. And they talk about, there's been a lot of stories that they talk, because the book is called The Eye of the World, so this thing does pop up a couple times. Loyal tells a story about, he tells a story about something that he heard, and he heard that somebody, I hope I'm not getting it wrong here, because I know there's a couple different stories. One of the stories we hear is from Perrin, And that story is when the Tuathlon told them that a maiden of the spear said that sight blinder was trying to get at the eye of the world or something like that. Sight blinder is just another name for the dark one. Another story was that Loyal had about the eye of the world, that he heard a story on his way to Camelin about a very similar situation. And then also in their dreams, Matt and Rand and all of them finally come clean about their dreams, and they're also told in their dreams that the eye of the world would not accept them. So there's all these arrows pointing to them needing to get to the eye of the world. And this is like in the third half of the third part of the book. Like it escalates very quickly.
Yeah.
So they formulate a plan. They're like, how the hell are we gonna get to the blight? And they're like, the blight? Are you serious? Like they're freaking out. Who the fuck wants to go to the blight, right? So the blight is basically the place closest to where the Dark One's prison is. Everything there is corrupted and dangerous. Not a safe space. Anyway, Loyal does mention the ways, so they plan to use this system of interdimensional pathways that allows you to travel hundreds of miles in a couple days. They go through the ways. Well, first they find a good ways. They find a way gate in Camelin, which is like in somebody's cellar. So they do spend about 2 days in the ways. On the last leg of the trip, right before the end, they are accosted by the Black Wind. And what do you know of the Black Wind, Andrew?
Oh, that's like it's like the basically like the sort of like evil wind of the dark one, or the I don't know what you would call it, but
Well, it's
it like
definitely a different type of evil. I would say it is part of the Dark One because it's a part of the taint of Sidene. That's definitely true. So if it's part of the taint of Sidene, then it's part of the Dark One.
yeah, yeah, and it like
So
tries
it's,
to corrupt you.
well, it kills you. The
Yeah,
Machadar doesn't corrupt you; it'll kill you straight up.
right,
I
right,
think
right.
we get some examples of what it did to some Trollocs, and they were kind of stricken by the gruesomeness of it. Um, but also, the Black Wind actually speaks, and the stuff that it says is just horrifying. But anyway,
Oh yeah, what does it say again? Uh,
like kills, scream, like it talks
yeah,
about how it loves screams and talks about sweet blood, and it just says like a bunch of creepy shit that if some person just randomly said this, you'd think that they're a serial killer or they're trying to kill you. Lots of creepy things. It says creepy stuff like sweet bones, suck the marrow out of your bones,
yeah,
kill you. Um, it's like really bad stuff. Stuff that'll drive you insane if you heard it for long enough. So at the last leg of their trip, this they get accosted by Ma Shin Shin, which is the Black Wind, this evil within the ways. They do escape with their lives. Um, when they get to the door, though, it's stuck, and they had to force their way out. They barely make it out, and at that point, Moraine loses her staff. So she gets a staff for this book, and then she never gets one again. I'm not sure why she loses her staff or what the rationale was in Robert Jordan's mind, but no more staff for Moraine.
right.
She actually used it as a focus for the One Power. I don't know if it was like I don't think it was a ter'angreal because some think ter'angreals are that easily destroyed, and they're typically not made out of wood. Um, so they end up in Faldara, which is in Shinar, one of the borderland cities, and they head to Faldara. Now, Faldara is a Shinaran city. um, Faldara, I guess their custom. I guess if we were to think about what parallel culture, I guess it would be kind of like Japanese culture, maybe samurai culture.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because they talk like their style is like their heads are shaved except for a top knot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Shinaran swords very much look like katanas.
That's a good point.
Borderland swords look like katanas in general. Like if you ever look at the Heron Mark blades, if you go on like online, they look very similar to katanas.
Okay.
And Borderlander swords basically look like Heron Mark blades without the Heron Mark on them. Because that's the same sword that Lan has. He has a blade that looks like a Heron Mark sword, but it's not Heron Mark. But Lan's sword is actually power rock too, so that there's that as well. So they meet up with Agilmar, who is the lord of the Faldara Keep. He's not the king of Faldara. He's just a lord, like a high level. I think he's a military commander of some sort. Um, so they go ahead and explain their case. Algamar accepts them wholeheartedly as the Borderlanders love Aes Sedai. They get a lot of help from them in controlling the Blight, unlike other places that hate Aes Sedai. So they're very much
Right.
welcome there. Aes Sedai do hold a place of honor in Borderland society.
Yeah.
They explain their need to Algamar and that they'll need to travel to the Blight. Algamar originally wants to send like a giant force with them, but Moraine objects and says they'll need as few people as possible not to not to get grab the attention
Yeah.
of 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 Trollocs and Murdral. They want a small, quick, fast moving force to get to where they need to go, which is the eye of the world.
Yeah.
Moraine's actually been there before.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if I would love to see something,
She met
I
the
would
Green
love.
Man before, right?
Yeah, if they ever, man, if Robert Jordan was ever alive, I'd love to see that first meeting with the Green Man. That would have been a
Yeah.
cool story.
Yeah.
That would
That
have
could
been an
have
interesting
been
book.
that he could have put that in the new spring.
Yeah, it's not in the
New
new
spring.
spring now.
Yeah, no, I'm saying he could have done that.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
That would have been a cool, or maybe even like a short story or a novella or something. That would
Yeah.
have been cool. So anyway, they object to this large force, but they do get escorted. One of their escorts is, dang, what's his name? Um, Ingtar.
Oh, right.
He's another Shinaran lord, high rank military official, warrior. He escorts them to the Blight. And well, before they leave, I forgot to say that all this time, Podon Fane has been following them. He even followed them through the ways. And it's kind of strange that he didn't get consumed by the Black Wind. I don't know if the Black Wind and the evil Shadar Logoth are kind of in league with each other, but he definitely escapes. They capture him at Faldara, and they hold him, they interrogate him, and they find out a lot of like what they find out what Podon Fane actually is. That he's a dark friend, that he was changed, at Sheol into some type of hound to follow three Emmons fielders.
Right.
So they put him and they lock him up in prison in Faldara. And they will interrogate him later. But I think it's important to note that he did follow them to Faldara.
Right.
All right, so they venture into the Blight. And they come across a bunch of fucked up mutated creatures. Um, I don't know. The only thing I could really describe the Blight as, it's really hot and humid. It's like if you're walking through a place that is just rotting. Like imagine like you're stepping on rotten foliage. I don't know, it's weird. It's just like the place is diseased, rotten, dying. The smell is horrendous.
It's
When
sort of
you
like
see,
it's sort of like either Mirkwood or Fangorn Forest in Lord of the Rings.
yeah, or the Upside Down in Stranger Things,
Yeah.
or what's another equivalent? It's like a really nasty place.
Yeah. Like the
Um,
I think it's is it Moraine who or is it Moraine or is it maybe Loyal who says at one point that you can't touch any of the plants and because they'll prick you and they'll infect you and some of them will try to do that without you even trying to touch them.
yeah, Moraine does get into that do not touch anything. Everything is basically poisonous and deadly. And there are certain bugs and creatures that will feign like being a stick. When I think that's one of the creatures she talks about. It's called a stick, like some type of bug that will only attack you if you try to touch it or something like that.
Right.
But the place is deadly. It's kind of like it reminds me of I guess it's like traveling through the Amazon in the 1800s. Like
Yeah.
it's deadly. The place stinks. It's hot. Everything's rotten and dying. And there's some very dangerous and violent creatures. Like even the trees will try to kill you.
Yeah.
It's like a crazy mutated wasteland. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Upside Down and perhaps if you've ever seen Annihilation, like everything past the shimmer. I don't know. Have you seen that
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
Annihilation?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
that's a good parallel too.
yeah. So it's kind of like a cross between the Upside Down and like Area X in Annihilation. Like it's a mutated, weird place. So they do get accosted by some pretty crazy looking creatures. They do take out some of them, but eventually something called a horde of worms starts following after them. And Land knows that they are way more than they can handle, so the only thing they can do is try to flee. They do flee, they start running away. They don't think they're going to make it, but the Green Man makes his presence known, and they actually get to the Green Man before they expected. They didn't expect to see the Green Man until they went through the high passes, but they actually he the way that you find the Green Man is you have to be in need, and they were in great need at that point.
Right.
So they go to this place. It's kind of like an oasis in the middle of the Blight, almost like a pocket dimension. I think it's more a pocket dimension than anything.
Sort of like Steading in that way, hey? Or do you think it's kind
Yeah,
of different?
I would say yes, but the only thing I would say no is that at least steadings can be located on a geographical point.
Yeah.
The Green Man cannot. So it's like a little dimension that can move. I don't know, it's really strange. They don't fully explain how the Green Man's sanctuary works.
Oh, you got cut
I'm
off
just
for about 10 seconds there again.
I'm just saying that they don't really fully explain how the Green Man's sanctuary works.
Yeah, but it moves around, right? And he says something like it's it's wherever you need it to be or something like that, right?
Yeah, so I think it works like a lot of the mechanics with because there's a bunch of different things that we learn about in the books, like portal stones and like all these alternate dimensions. It seems like the Aes Sedai were capable of some pretty crazy scientific breakthroughs, and this
Yeah.
is probably the result of it, like the creation of this pocket dimension.
Yeah.
But
And it's like that in like with the idea of the age of legends being like a sort of like a future time rather than a time in the past kind of makes me think of like when they pass through the way gates, for example. Maybe it's like people using technology in the future to figure out how to travel instantly from one location to the other by opening up a wormhole.
yeah, because they definitely had that knowledge. And if you think about some descriptions of the Age of Legends, I know they describe it in book four. So they had like guns, they had flying vehicles, they had cars. So they were definitely technologically much more advanced than Rand's time period. So there's certain aspects that you can think about, like, okay, they must have been technologically advanced in some ways that we don't understand that much. But I think this is one of the things, like, okay, they created this pocket dimension and they hid something in it. And what they hid is the pool of Sidene, and we'll get to that. So they meet
Yeah.
the Green Man, who's basically like this Ent type of character, if we're taking a Tolkien reference. It's a
Yeah.
tree man, basically.
Yep.
Uh, a tree man who has some interesting powers. He has the power to grow things, I guess. And he is a tender of this area. They finally meet. The tree man seems to know why they're there, and he directs them to the cave where the eye of the world is. And as they do that, come to Forsaken. We have okay, because I know you're. Do you know who the two Forsaken are, Andrew?
One of them, is it Agenor and Balthamel?
There you go. I'm surprised you got it, but then again, I'm not because you probably
Because I
read that like an
yeah, I,
hour
I I
ago.
read that today.
All right, so you got Agenor and Balthamel. These are two Forsaken that were very close to the edge, so time did not treat them very well.
Right.
Um, you Agenor looks basically like a zombie.
Yeah.
Balsamo, we don't know what he's looked like because he's completely clad in leather, but he probably also looks like a zombie under that leather.
Yeah. Zombie Gimp.
Um, yeah, zombie gimp. So anyway, they were following them to the eye of the world, and they attack. Um, Agenor attacks the group. So does Balthamel. So first, I think there's first Lan is conflicted. I guess if I haven't brought this up, there's definitely a love story between Lan and Nynaeve. It's very
Yeah.
subtle. It's there.
At
When I
first,
first read the book, I was like, "What the fuck? These two people like each other."
yeah.
But it's there. It's you just have to like pay great attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, so there comes a point where Lan doesn't know what to do. He has his duty as a warder to protect Moraine first and foremost, but he also is in love with Nynaeve. So he's conflicted on who to help first. So he basically hurls himself at Agenor. Agenor uses the one power to fling him away like a rag doll. He crashes into a wall, and I
Right.
believe that puts him out of commission for a while.
Yeah.
Um, And then what Moraine does, she opens like a fire pit under Agenor, and it does nothing to him. He just floats over the pit. Um, I guess using air. I guess he was expecting to drop into this pit of fire, but he just walks out and he fights Moraine. Moraine doesn't last very long at all. At this point, Rand, I think, goes running. Also, before then, Balthamel attacks Nynaeve. Um, the Green Man fucks up Balthamel royally.
Yep.
Um,
They basically
they they
they basically
basically kill each other, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So Balthamel burns the Green Man, which causes a mortal injury. However, the Green Man infects Balthamel with spores, and like a zombie ant, spores of mushrooms and green things and things that grow in dark, damp caves burst through Balthamel and kill him. So
Yeah.
he goes down. So Rand goes running. He comes across Agenor. They have a struggle. Rand notices that there's like these cables connected to them that are flowing with the one power. Agenor starts playing psychological warfare on Rand by summoning an image of his mother, and and I guess it doesn't really work against Rand. It does affect him emotionally, but it doesn't affect him so much that it incapacitates Rand. So what they do is they struggle to hold the power, the eye of the world, the power of the eye of the world. What happens is that in that struggle, Agenor actually burns himself out. He doesn't have the power to wield that the side the cleansed Sidar, the eye of the world. Rand does, however. He is able to wield it and not burn himself out. He was
Yeah.
very close to doing so, but he didn't. Um,
Yeah.
After this, some interesting things happen. Um, Balzamon comes upon the scene,
Yeah.
and it seems like they kind of have a battle that's half in the real world and half in Teleran Riod.
Yeah, that part is so like bizarre and interesting and mildly confusing.
It's definitely confusing. So what happens is, whew, this is hard to explain. So they're kind of going in and out of the world of dreams. Ultimately, this leads Rand to Tarwin's Gap. So what is Tarwin's Gap, Andrew?
I don't remember
You
what
just read it.
exactly. I don't remember like all the terminology, man.
Well, Tarwin's Gap is the place where the Shinarans are going to do battle with the Trolloc Horde.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sure if you remember that Rand kind of appears there and he overlooks the battle,
Right. Yeah.
and then
Oh
he
yeah, he has
actually
like this is one thing I was going to ask you about in this part. Is he having sort of a premonition of the last battle?
no, this is something that's actually happening.
Oh. Oh,
So this is
okay.
how okay, so this is real time. This is not like a dream.
Oh, okay.
So this battle is something that is happening, and he actually affects this battle by channeling.
Oh, okay. Oh, see,
He
I didn't
just
I didn't realize that. I thought I that's one of the parts that I was confused about.
so he destroys part of this army, and that creates a victory for the Shinarans. And we'll get back to that.
Okay.
Also, during this kind of in and out of the dream world sequence, he fights with Baalzamon, and then he He uses he first. This is the first time he summons his sword of light,
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
he stabs Baalzamon with it, and he believes he's killed Baalzamon. There's a
He breaks the
He
he
breaks the
breaks those
cord.
ropes around him. Yeah,
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 the cord. So the cords are they're hard to explain, but from what I've listened to, these cords are connection to the eye of the world, which is that big pool of Sidar. I know for Baalzamon, one of the cords is his connection to the Dark One,
right.
or where he gets his power. I know he severs these cords, and he believes that he's defeated or killed them. It's one. I think I will have to revisit like the last lot spoilers for the Eye of the World because some weird shit goes on in there that I totally don't fully understand. And that's one of them, just that battle. Um, all right, so um, I think Rand believes he's won, and he's like, "Yeah, I won. I've beat him. I've defeated Shaitan." And when he says Shaitan, the world lurches.
Yeah,
So you're like, "No, he's not. You haven't defeated him." Anytime the world lurches after you saying Shaitan, that means he's still alive. Um,
yeah,
he goes back. He tells everybody what happened. Um, well, actually, he doesn't really tell them what happened. He kind of lies a little bit. He doesn't. Only a few of the group know that he's a male channeler and what that means. He talks to Moraine, and Moraine talks about the suspicions she had. Um, she did she did have suspicions about the first time was when he healed Bella. Um, he thought he had he was a channeler since back then, and that the coin that she used to track them, that he was able to resist that.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting too.
So there were a couple little clues that informed her of that he may be a male channeler. Um, but yeah, they get back to they traveled back from the Blight relatively unmolested. When they get back to Faldara, the season changes to spring. So that's a victory on their part. Also, Ingtar talks about the battle at Tarwin's Gap and how they miraculously won, and that had totally had to do with Rand's appearance on the battlefield.
Yeah,
That half at least I think at least half that Trolloc army got wiped out after Matt appeared. I'm not Matt, Rand appeared, and everyone's happy and happily ever after. That's basically the whole book right there.
yeah.
But here's my question to you for this first, because I have different favorite characters for each book. Who is your favorite character in book one?
No, I was thinking about that a lot, and I kind of think my favorite character is Tom. I just like how he's
Oh,
like,
interesting choice.
yeah, he's like he's he's wise and he knows a lot, and he's kind of an entertainer and an artist too. But he can also be a badass. But he's also like he's he's blunt, and he does like he's uh like a little gruff, like he's kind of skeptical of things that happen, and like he's skeptical of people being impressed by cities earlier on and stuff. And
Mm.
yeah, I just like him for all those reasons.
That's an interesting choice considering, his fate in the first book.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
but
but yeah, well, we can talk about that on another on the next book. But Yeah, that's a really interesting choice. I've never heard anyone's pick Tom as their favorite character from the first book.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, I do see that. What you mean? Like he's like a he's like a carefree artist who really wants to help these boys because of some past trauma that he's experienced. So yeah, he's like a father figure a little bit, you know. Yeah, that's a good choice. I think my favorite character from the first book is Moraine.
Oh yeah.
I just like that she has her shit together. She's kind of the rock of the group, the taskmaster,
Yep.
keeps everybody on task. She uses like logic to steer people to her way of thinking.
Yep.
Like especially like when Nynaeve tries uses like emotion. Like Nynaeve is very much guided by emotion, and then Moraine comes back with the logical reasons about why they should do what Moraine wants to do.
Yeah.
And then eventually Nynaeve sees that logic and acquiesces. Because it seems like very early on, like we have these two leader figures, the wisdom of Emmons Field, who is Nynaeve, and Moraine. They're like constantly butting heads. And it's kind of like this power struggle between the two of them throughout this journey that they're going on in the first book, and I really liked that dynamic. Um, well, who was your least favorite character in this
Oh.
book?
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe
I have one. I know
maybe
mine.
that I forget what his name is. The guy who was like torturing Perrin.
Oh, Child Buyer.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would. I can agree with that. What I mean by, oh, okay, out of the main characters, who's your least favorite?
Oh. Hmm. I would say I guess I would probably say
Hello, can you hear me? Uh-oh, did you get cut off? Uh-oh. Let's see what happened here. I can't hear you. Uh-oh. We're having some technical difficulties. Hello? I wonder if it's my headset, maybe? Let's see. Uh-oh. Oh, it's just, oh. Yeah, I'm all by myself then. It's like Andrew's laptop shut down. Andrew had some technical difficulties. His laptop actually shut down. I think I'm still here. And we almost got through the whole thing, too. Oh, you're back.
Oh, there we go. I don't know what just happened.
Weird.
Yeah, that's never happened before. Um, you were
You
asking
completely
me,
cut off when your the character that was your least favorite.
yeah, let the one of the main characters that was my least favorite, right? Um,
Yeah, main
yeah,
characters.
I guess out of the main characters, my least favorite in this book is probably Egwene because
Mhm.
it doesn't. I mean, she does channel a little bit, but it doesn't seem like she's that useful, and she seems like really kind of whiny and pathetic sometimes. Because you were criticizing the
Mm. I know there's a lot of
This is the day
criticisms
after
of
Women's Day.
Or Egwene. Egwene is often. It's funny because the podcast, the Watt spoilers, sometimes they'll mispronounce names, and Egwene is one of the mispronunciations.
Yeah, yeah,
That's all right. Well, anyway, mine for this book, specifically this book, my least favorite character would be Matt.
okay.
Because look at how much trouble he gets them in. Like halfway through the book, he becomes a complete asshole. Um, and he doesn't step into his own until maybe the third book. Like it's not until the third book that he gets a POV chapter.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So in this book, in the very first book, he's nothing but trouble. Like the deal with the white cloaks in the mud, stealing the dagger, lying about it, or at least not being truthful about it. Um, he caused Rand a lot of problems when they got separated from Tom at Whitebridge when they were traveling alone together. Um, and he started becoming like corrupted by evil
yep,
until Moraine kind of cleanses him of of his taint. But
yeah,
yeah, throughout this book, Matt was kind of he whined a lot on that trip when they
yeah,
were traveling um, between Whitebridge and Camelin, and he was kind of an asshole to a lot of the people that they came upon. Like he was very suspicious of everybody.
yeah. He does that
Um,
kind of childish throughout the book,
yeah,
childishly.
yeah. So and this is just this book because he actually overall, okay, the first time I read it, read the series, overall, my favorite character was Matt.
Oh yeah, you told me that because he's like Han Solo.
Yeah, but in this book, I do not like him that much. He's just kind of an asshole.
Yeah, he's not that much of a drinker and gambler and womanizer yet.
No, he doesn't come into his own until book three, because book three is when he gets healed.
Yeah,
And book two, he's not healed completely, but there's like he's not healed completely, but his role is big because of what he does with the horn. But he's not much of an asshole in book two. He's not an asshole in book two like he was in book one because of the corruption of the dagger.
right.
Because he had a different that personality he had because of the corruption was completely off putting to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
So that was my least favorite of the mains for this book. I have like it shifts around. Because I was just finished. I'm almost done with book four, and I think Perrin might be my favorite in this in book four.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have my reasons for that in book four.
okay.
I'd have to explain that when we go along to that. But yeah. So overall, I guess book one, I love it. It's great. Um, there are a lot of parallels between that and Lord of the Rings, but it's different enough that you're not shaking your head like when you're reading Sword of Shannara. Sword of Shannara is just extremely derivative. The first half of the book, at least. This one takes. I like the departure. Like it does nod to Tolkien, but it doesn't borrow so much so heavily that it's just a Tolkien book with different characters.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like I know, like there's a lot of similarities between orcs and Trollocs and stuff like that, but I think they're different enough that they have their own flavors, like their own personalities. Like
Yeah.
when I think of orcs, I just think of um like English Cockney type people.
And they're different from Trollocs too, even though Trollocs are kind of like the parallel creatures in Wheel of Time, because orcs are orcs are like short, and they're like way smaller than Trollocs. And Trollocs are way bigger.
Well,
And
unless they
then
were talking about the Orokai, which are bigger
yeah,
orcs.
yeah. The Uruk-hai are more similar to Trollocs because they're they're like, I guess they're kind of like half-breed man and orcs made by Sauron, so they're more similar to Trollocs in that point, because Trollocs were men who were corrupted by the Dark One in that way, but orcs were just like evil from the start.
Yeah, Trollocs too, they're like, I don't know, they eat people. And that's always off-putting. And any scene, like when a Trolloc raids something, it's just like the bloodiest, messiest looking thing ever event.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I just find a Trollocs are more have baser instincts and they're just more I don't know, they're just driven more just to kill for the fun of it. Because I think I remember Trollocs kill just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And you don't really see that with the orcs so much. It's more like their own race and they have like their own deals. But orcs live to kill. That's like one of their base instincts is to kill and eat. But yeah, that's would you recommend this book?
Yeah, for sure. It's especially because it's one of those books, because it's so detailed and complex. It's one of those books that you can go back and revisit over and over again, and you'll get more out of it each time. Like I definitely liked this first one more the second time I read it,
Yeah.
than I did the first time I read it, because it's
Uh,
so complex and detailed that I missed so much the first time. And it's just especially if you've read the entire series already, it's so much more of an intricate story. And like you were telling me before, there's so much foreshadowing of what happens in the future. It's really interesting. And it's
Foreshadowing.
it's like, you know how you and I have talked about like comparing fantasy like Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones to Wheel of Time. And I
Mhm.
think I think one thing that's good about the Wheel of Time is that there's sort of more action in the stories, especially in the earlier books, than there is in the Game of Thrones books. And then
Mhm.
there's more like fantasy content, like details about magic and all the standard like fantasy tropes, like fights with magic creatures and stuff. In Game of Thrones,
Mhm.
one thing that I do like about it, but it's different, is that it's sort of like criticize a fantasy story about criticizing traditional fantasy tropes, like these knights that have been romanticized are actually like pretty gruff and bad motherfuckers and that sort of thing. But but the thing in Wheel of Time is that it's more it's like that, but it's less traditional in Lord of the Rings, in that it's more like it's way more complex and it involves so many more characters and so many intricate worlds and cultures and stories throughout the whole series.
Yeah, and I think Game of Thrones pulls more from history, just like the structure of knighthood in general and
Yeah.
how that works. Like there, that structure doesn't exist in the Wheel of Time. Like you do not have knights. There are no
Yep.
knights. There's no knight class, and it's very much different. I think Game of Thrones definitely pulls from history much more than well, especially English history. So the War of the Roses, I know, was a big influence for George R. Martin.
Yeah.
So just like that, those aspects of history are very much represented. Um, but one thing I wanted to think about, did Robert Jordan's book come out first? It did, right? When was George R. Martin's first book?
Yeah, I think the like they were releasing their books at around the same time. But Robert Jordan's books came out first. They were talking about that on Wheel of Time spoilers, I think. I think they said maybe Game of Thrones came out after the first.
Well, it had
um
to because Game of Thrones had a nod to it, right?
yeah, I think they said that Game of Thrones the first book came out after the first maybe 3 or 4 um Wheel of Times books, because
Mm-hmm.
the first Wheel of Time book came out in 1990. Let me
Mm-hmm.
see when the first one came out here. Um, yeah, like, do you remember them saying that? Oh, yeah. Okay, it says on Wikipedia that A Game of Thrones, the first Song of Ice and Fire book was published in 1996.
Oh yeah, that's far after
Yeah,
Robert Jordan. So if you keep that in mind, because I think if that's the case, a couple of different Wheel of Time books were published before
yeah,
the first Song of Ice and Fire. All right, now
yeah,
that I think about it, think of the term Game of Thrones. Do you think that comes directly from Game of Houses?
yeah. That's that's what I was thinking too. Yeah,
Because the Game of Houses is this aspect of Wheel of Time that describes how people of noble birth interact with each
yeah.
other.
And it's interesting too that also in the Game of Thrones series, like the different ruling classes who are competing for the throne, they're called houses, which is also
Mm.
similar to like the Game of Houses.
Yeah, one of the subtleties I wanted to speak of about that you wouldn't catch on a first reading is something as subtle as Moraine's and Tom's first meeting,
Yeah.
is they actually play the game of houses when they meet. And you wouldn't know that like on their first read through.
Oh yeah, that's true.
As I know, I believe when Moraine and Tom first meet each other, they know who each other are.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
But you wouldn't know that unless you kind of read the whole series. As I know, she alludes, she calls him a master bard, and that's kind of a Game of Houses nod, telling him that she knows who he is.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, they're playing the Game of Houses because Tom is considered the master of it, but Moraine is no slouch either
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
because she's also good because she was a noble woman before going to the White Tower. So
Yeah,
she
that's
was
true.
raised in Carrion, which is like Game of Houses Central.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah,
It's like
good book.
it's easier to keep the characters straight the second time I'm going through this too, because I was telling you I got confused about some of the different characters and their relationships, but this time around I kept saying in my head, "Oh, okay, so uh, Eg Egwene Egwene likes Rand, and Elaine and Min like Rand too, but Elaine is the heir to the throne of Andor, and Min is like a tomboy who can kind of like she has like premonitions and she knows she can tell things psychologically about people and stuff.
Yeah, kind
Yeah.
of not Avienda.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Where they add more characters is where it starts to get confusing.
Yeah, I think there's over 400 named characters
Yeah.
in the series, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a good series. I highly recommend it. Anybody that if they are into fantasy, this is definitely an entertaining series that I'd recommend to everybody. It's really long, so if you plan to get into this series, there's a lot of material that you'll have to get through in order to know the complete story.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff. It's well written. As an author, I think Robert Jordan is pretty damn entertaining.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, did you have any final thoughts on the book?
Um, no, not really, other than like they're definitely they're definitely worth taking all the time to read because they're like it's a lot of material to get through. It's like oh yeah, you sent me you sent me the statistical analysis of the word count. I don't remember what it said the total word count was for the whole series, but each
Oh,
one
it's
of
over
them,
a million. It's over a
yeah,
million words.
yeah, like each book is at least 700 pages and there are 14 books, so it's a lot to go through, but it's well worth your time, I would say.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Like the first time I went through it, I did all audiobook, and sometimes, I wasn't paying attention too much. This time I'm sticking to reading only, and I'm definitely like getting it. I'm like reading through stuff. I was like, wow, this is super fascinating, and it's much better. I think the series is actually much better on the second read through.
Yeah, like I was saying, yeah.
Like the first read through, it's okay. But the second read through, that's when you're seeing like all the nuances, all the foreshadowing, all the you get to see the intricate web that Robert Jordan created to create this universe much more clearly on the
Yeah.
second read through.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. So I guess we're good on this one.
All right.
I infected you with the Wheel of Time disease.
Yep. Did a good job of that. Gonna go gonna do episodes on all 14 of the books now. Or do you want to still do one on New Spring actually?
Yep, I'm gonna try to cover them chronologically as they were
Okay.
published.
Oh, okay. So like
Yeah.
that's A New Spring comes out after the first six books, is it?
I believe so. I'll have to revisit it, but I'm basically like reading wise, I'm on the last chapter of book 4. So I should be starting book 5 soon. I've actually purchased all the way up to book 7. So I have book 5 waiting for me. Book 4, 5, and 6 are like huge.
Yeah. Is Lord of Chaos the sixth one that's also the longest one?
Yeah, Lord of Chaos is 6. No, 5. Wait, okay. It goes. Okay, so the fourth one is. What's the name of the fourth book? Well, I know the Fires of Heaven is the next book, and then the Lord of Chaos is book 6.
Great
So
Hunt is
book
two, right?
Great Hunt is 2, Dragon Reborn is 3. What the hell's number 4 called? I've been reading it too. God damn it. What is the name of that book? Let me go look at the cover.
I
I
can
know the cover is green. That's all I know.
The Shadow
Oh, there,
Rising.
there you go. Shadow Rising. That's the name of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but they all have great, and it seems like all of the books have awesome climaxes.
Yeah,
Like he's really good at writing some pretty good climaxes in the book.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and then there's
And
like stories that I like right now. I can name you a place in the story that I remember reading about, and it's like a giant plot in there, and I couldn't tell you anything about that.
oh yeah.
I just don't remember. Like whenever he goes to formatting.
I'm like the opposite way in a sense. Sometimes I can remember, well, no, it depends on the thing. Sometimes I can remember like events that happen, but I can't remember where they happen. Or I think
Oh,
that
do you
happened.
remember formatting?
No.
The only thing I remember about formatting is that he was with that old powerful Aes Sedai. What's her name? The one that takes over Moraine's job after Moraine's gone.
Oh,
Cad Swain.
right, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah, that's all I know is that Cad Swain and him go to formatting for some reason.
right.
I don't know why. It's like a lot of like I get refreshed as I'm reading it, and then I start. Oh yeah, I remember that. But right now, I couldn't tell you anything about formatting. I couldn't tell you anything about when they become circus sideshows. Do you remember that part of the series when they
Not.
travel with the circus?
Oh, that vaguely, yeah.
I remember. I remember when Matt goes to that city full of people who like to duel each other, and he meets Tuon.
Yeah.
But there's like so much stuff there that it's hard to remember it all. It's so much content.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a 14 season series
Yeah. Yeah.
and being expecting to know like every little thing that happens.
Or it's like the Bible, but like 14 times as long, 14 times
14
long.
times as long. Well, how
Yeah.
long is the Bible? How many
It's like
pages is it?
I don't well, if you include the New and the Old Testament, it might be like I don't remember exactly, but it might be like 1500 pages or something. But
Oh, is that why like the
they're
pages are thin as hell?
yeah. And the
Have you
pages are
seen a
thin as
physical
hell and
copy? Like, have you seen a physical copy of Atlas Shrugged?
yeah, I have one right
Are
here
the
actually.
are
It's
the
like that.
pages like the Bible?
Yeah, yeah, the pages are like that, but the Bible in the Bible, well, depending on the version you have, the version I read last time was it had double columns. So even if you consider like each of those to be 2 pages, it's still like
Hmm.
if you give like a really massive estimate, let's say it's 3000 pages at the most, which is probably far less than it actually is. That's still way less than all the Wheel of Time books.
Yeah. Well, what you mean, like putting them together? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to see like if you had a copy of Atlas Shrugged and if the pages were like Bible thin,
Yeah, they
like a
are.
Bible.
They are.
So it's like a Bible kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's the anarcho-capitalist Bible.
I also need to get back into Game of Thrones. I was just thinking of reading that again too.
Yeah, me too.
So much stuff to revisit. I have like my entire wait list on my library list is full. Um, 'Cause I'm trying to cram as much fantasy series. Like it's all fantasy series stuff that I'm waiting on. So I'm waiting on Broken Earth Part Two, the Stormlight Archive, which is another Sanderson series. Uh, Belgariad. That's Have you heard of that fantasy series?
Sounds familiar. What is
Yeah,
it?
it's an old fantasy series. I've never read it, but I heard that it's. I know the Legendarium covers it. That's basically the only reason I'm reading it.
Oh, okay.
Same thing with the Shannara. I'm trying to read everything that the Legendarium covers.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I like fantasy stuff and I love listening to podcasts after I read a book. So I try to find different podcasts discussing a book that I just read. That helps me kind of cement more of the information in my head and think of
Okay.
like some different type of analyses that I may have missed. So that's one of the things I often do. At least I try to do. Is after I'm done with a book, I try to find some podcasts or discussions about the book.
Okay.
Help
I
me
should do that
solidify that
too.
information. I do that with most books that I read. I try to find like some type of analysis of it. And that really
Okay.
helps me out, just kind of organize the information in my brain.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I usually don't do that, but I have been doing that with other books lately too, because I've been reading some old Celt and Celtic and Irish literature like Beowulf and this one called, I think it's called the Ulster Cycle, which is like a series um sort of short stories which were similar to Beowulf. They were the earliest written Irish stories, like how Beowulf is like basically just the earliest written story.
Is it like the Koreathon cycle?
What's that?
You don't know what the Koreathon cycle is?
No?
Ah, come on, man. It's the like you don't know what the Koreathon cycle.
No.
It's the book that prophesizes the dragon prophecies in old time.
Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean,
Now, do you know what I'm talking about?
yes. Yes. I mean, like the thing about really old literature like that for me is that I forget sometimes that it's supposed to sort of be read as poetry,
Mhm.
especially, well, yeah, both of them, both Beowulf and the Ulster Cycle. So, and with the old language that's used with the translations, I sometimes get confused about what's happening. So, a lot of these are since they're so old, they're public domain. So people have put on YouTube like audio of people reading them, which always helps me understand them better. And then
Mm.
like I think I watched a lecture about one of them too, about the Ulster cycle, which was really helpful.
Yeah, and I hope this what we're doing here helps people too,
Yeah.
because that's one of the reasons why I like doing this because I seek this content out myself. I seek out like I was saying earlier, right after I finish a book, I try to find podcasts or content that analyzes what I just read. It just helps me kind of soak in what I just read a bit, you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do this with movies too. Like right after I watch a movie, I'll find movie reviews for the movie I just watched.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So I do this with a lot of content that I consume. I consume it and I look for content analyzing what I just consumed. I
Yeah,
do it myself as well, but sometimes I get these missing insights that other people have that I didn't. That really helps me kind of weave together the different concepts that they're speaking about in these books and movies and things.
for sure. Yeah, it all helps. And like with Wheel of Time, for instance, it's reading the books physically, listening to them as audiobooks, talking with you about them, listening to those Wheeler of Time spoilers and Legendarium podcasts, and like you notice also with both of those podcasts, even the people who are doing those podcasts, they get confused about things sometimes, and each of them misses things, and they have to let each other know about stuff that they missed.
Yeah, certainly. And then sometimes one podcast missed something because I think Legendarium's really good at meta analysis. They analyze things good as a whole and kind of get like the little try to get the most important bits out there because it doesn't go chapter by chapter like the other podcasts. But the other podcasts, they just like dissect it to atoms, you know, to
Yeah,
its
yeah,
smallest little
definitely.
pieces.
Yeah,
And I love that as well. You know, that's very hard pressed to get a podcast that does that. Like, so now when I get back into Lord of the Rings, I want to read that again. I have the Legendarium, and they break down, I think it in three. They break down the Lord of the Rings, I think, in three chapter chunks.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Like,
I want to read the before the next time I read the Lord of the Rings again, I want to read the Silmarillion because I still haven't read that in its entirety yet, I don't think.
yeah, and Legendarium, they do a breakdown of it too. But I
Yeah.
think Greg, who's the main guy, Tolkien's his favorite, so he put a lot of effort in the very beginning of his podcast covering Tolkien related material.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I don't know. Fantasy is fascinating, and it's
Yeah.
big. It's look at all these. Look, we got Game of Thrones is huge.
Yep.
We have Wheel of Time coming sometime soon. Um, the Lord of the Rings won an Academy Award. It's a freaking fantasy movie,
Yep.
and I think the Lord of the Rings and Titanic are tied in the amount of Academy Awards that they've won.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings Return of the King tied Titanic, and I think one other movie, I don't remember which one it was. It might have been I think it might have been Gone with the Wind or Casablanca or maybe Lawrence of Arabia. I don't remember. It's one of those older ones. Um, it tied with those. It tied the Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King tied with whichever one of those old movies got. I think it was 12. I don't remember whether it was 12 or 14 Academy Awards. It tied with one of those and Titanic for the record of the most Academy Awards for one film.
Yeah, so okay, so hmm, I'm looking at a list right now, and Lord of the Rings got 11, Titanic got 11, and Ben-Hur got 11.
Oh, Ben-Hur, yeah, different
Hmm.
older one.
Yeah, that's definitely an older movie. I saw the new Ben-Hur. That was okay.
Yeah.
But it looks like Lord of the Rings is tied with Titanic at 11 wins, and with Ben-Hur.
Oh, okay.
So, fantasy movies, fantasy as a genre, very powerful.
Yeah,
And I think Lord of the Rings got nominated for seven categories.
it's like the
17.
oh
17, which is the same as Titanic, which was,
oh okay.
wait, wait, hold on. No? Titanic got nominated for 14, and Lord of the Rings got nominated for 11, which means Lord of the Rings won every single category they were nominated for.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
So Titanic actually lost some of its nominations.
Oh, okay.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And saying that the largest sweep winning awards in every nominated category was Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
So look at the power of fantasy. Look
Yeah,
at fantasy something you want to pay attention to because some of these series are turning into movies. They're turning into TV series. It's like I love, and it's fun like watching Game of Thrones with my wife. Like I'm ever able to explain everything to her because I read the books.
yeah, yeah.
So
Exactly.
that's like it's really fun to be knowledgeable, and then she really loves the series. So it's really fun being, someone that introduces this and introducing it to someone you wouldn't expect to like it.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely.
Because fantasy is definitely nerdy stuff, and my wife really isn't a nerd at all.
Oh, okay.
But there's enough drama, like there's enough soap opera drama in Game of Thrones that it appeals to that demographic.
Yeah, yeah. That's true.
Like people stabbing each other behind their backs. That's very, very. And then there's the strong female characters like Daenerys and Arya Stark.
Yeah,
So it's it's like nerd stuff becomes mainstream eventually. So
Yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, they were talking about that on Wheel of Time spoilers too.
that nerd stuff eventually becomes mainstream.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, yeah, and I kind of like trying to. I'm not saying that it's after the fact because I've discovered a lot of things after they became big. Like Lord of the Rings.
Oh
I
yeah, me
didn't
too.
I didn't read the first book until after I watched the first movie.
Yeah, me too. I think I might not have read any of the books until I watched all of the movies actually.
Hmm. Yeah, I think after the first movie, I started reading all the books.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then same with Game of Thrones. After I watched the first season, I started reading all the books.
Oh, okay.
Um, Wheel of Time, I just started reading it as a recommendation. Someone recommended it to me. Oh man, you got to check out these awesome books. Check them out, and it's like, oh man, these are
Yeah.
awesome. And then now I just get book recommendations a lot from podcasts and things like that. So I don't know. I love reading now. I didn't like the amount of reading I've done 2 years ago opposed to now is like ridiculous.
Yeah, I bet, man. It seems like you're reading like as many books as me or maybe more. And I
Yeah, but I read
read
slower than you do.
yeah, and I read like
Yes.
I don't know. I guess I read like at least 3 books a week, sometimes more than that. Sometimes I'm surprised at at the number of books that I read because I kind of like underestimate. But you read like probably at least 3 a week too, right?
Sometimes it really depends on what I'm reading. If it's nonfiction, it'll take me longer, even if the book's shorter. If I'm reading like a Miss Bourne novel, I'll finish that in 2 days, or any fantasy novel. But so I think The Eye of the World, I read it again in like 3 or 4 days, and this was just audiobook form. But
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's so hard. It's way harder to get through it in physical book form. I tried to get it out of my library, but I didn't, so I had to read my physical copy. That's why it took me like it probably
longer.
took me like a week and a half to read it, I think.
Yeah, it took me about that long to read it the first time. But yeah, this year I've read 23 books already. This year
Oh, okay.
isn't it's more than how much I read last year at this point in time. But I think my
Mm.
goal is 52 books, which I'm basically going to surpass because I'm already almost halfway there. I'm only 3 months in.
Make a bigger goal, man.
I will next year.
Yeah.
I think last year I read 66 books. Not a super whole lot, but the year before that I only read 15 books.
Oh, okay. I've
So
read I've read 47 books this year.
47, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, that's a lot.
I think I'm a little slower than I was last year though, but yeah, that's good.
47 books in 3 months.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, like on Goodreads, you can usually if you type like if you enter a short story or a poem or something like that in there, it counts as a book too. Or
Oh yeah,
sometimes
I know
you
that. Like I've read
yeah,
a Wheel of Time comic book and it counted as a book.
yeah. So you can do that too. So not all of those were like full books, but most of
Like
them
full
were.
300-page books.
Yeah. But most of them were.
Yeah.
And most of them I don't read as audiobooks too. I listen to audiobooks less often than I read physical books.
Oh, wow. I'm opposite.
Yeah.
I listen to audiobooks way more than physical, like by huge magnitudes.
Yeah, I remember you described that to me. Who was it when you were talking to Brent on our new Jim Crow chat, maybe when you were saying that yeah, I listen to audiobooks while I'm doing stuff, while I take my daughter to the park and sit there for an hour when we're going home and going to work and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's like anytime I'm doing some type of activity that doesn't require my brain to process vocal or any like if I'm doing a task that doesn't require my brain to access my language centers, I dedicate that completely to podcasting or book.
Oh, okay.
So that's doing any type of task that doesn't require me accessing my language center, my
Right.
brain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And but the only time I read is like physical is an hour before bed, and sometimes an hour after I wake up.
Oh, okay.
But the vast majority of my reading is audiobooks.
Okay.
The only time like I'm dedicating my most of my reading, my physical reading right now to Wheel of Time. Everything else is audio unless I can't get it on audio and I have to read it. Like for instance, the Mistborn Secret Histories, I could not, that my library didn't carry that in audio, so I had to read it.
Oh, okay.
But that one was short. I think it was only 160 pages, so it wasn't a very long
Oh,
book at
so it's
all.
like a novella.
Yeah. And then the book, that John Le Carre book, I also had to read because they didn't have a audiobook version.
John McClure book?
John Le Carre?
Oh, John Le Carre.
Le
It's a
Carre, that's how you say it?
it's a French name.
Okay. Oh. Well, that's not even a real name.
That's true. Yeah. Maybe it is.
Well, yeah.
Maybe it is pronounced that way. I guess I just assume that from the way it's spelled.
I don't know. Is there an accent mark at the end, or?
I don't remember.
But yeah, I don't read a whole lot because I have too much shit to do,
Yeah.
basically. That requires my physical body to not be in one place for a while, which is
Yeah,
why I'm
it's
only able to really read books when I'm an hour before
yeah.
bed.
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of people to get time for that reason.
Yeah, and then it's sometimes hard too because an hour before bed, you're reading a book and then like you're fighting hard to like stay awake. At the same time, you're not really comprehending what you're reading because you're also fighting hard to stay awake.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that
so there'll be a
sucks.
time when I read like a whole page and I don't know what I just read.
Yeah.
But that usually happens when I'm like trying to right now. It's better for me to not fight sleep and just go to sleep because I'm not gonna. It's like I'm wasting my time here if I'm just trying to read it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Because I have this completion complex where I feel that I don't feel good when I don't complete a chapter.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, oh, I have to finish this chapter at all costs, even if I don't know what I'm reading.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get that sometimes too. I really
But yeah, that's the only issue I have with not so much with audiobooks because I don't listen to them typically before bed.
Oh, okay.
I've done that with some podcasts, but I try not to because they'll keep me up.
The podcast will?
Podcasts will keep me up. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like one of
Oh,
the ones that kept me up recently was the one with Tim Pool and Rogan and Jack Dorsey.
oh yeah, I've been listening to that. I haven't finished it yet, but I really like it. It's
That
interesting.
one kept me up. when I should have been sleeping.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
And then, you could use reading as an excuse. Like, nobody could say anything bad about you reading a book before bed.
Yeah,
My excuse is, hey, it helps me fall asleep.
yeah,
And it does sometimes. Sometimes parts of books are boring.
yep, that's true.
But yeah, books are fun. I wish I was consistent because I used to read a lot too when I was younger, and I just stopped reading a lot. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm always torn between different media. Like sometimes I really like to watch movies a lot. Sometimes I just like to play video games a lot. Sometimes I like to read books a lot. And I kind of have these three things tagging me all at the same time, trying to figure out which type of media do I want to consume at a
Oh,
particular
yeah,
moment.
me too. I usually have some sort of routine though. Like I'll read or listen to audiobooks during the day usually, and not watch or listen to podcasts until it's like the end of the day and I'm getting ready to eat supper and stuff like that. Because I used to be like addicted to watching and listening to podcasts and audiobooks and stuff like that, and I would do that all day long, and it would get to the point where I would get too distracted by what I'm watching or listening to, and I wouldn't be paying attention to what I'm actually doing.
Hmm.
So I like to
I guess
limit,
it really depends on what you're doing too.
yeah, that's why I like to limit my podcast time to like a few hours a day now.
Oh, I don't do that. Not at all. Well, I'm always doing things. Like I might be folding clothes, washing dishes, cooking, a bunch of chores. I think listening to something while you're doing that just makes doing those activities easier to stomach, making them easier to stomach. Like those
Yeah.
boring and repetitive activities that I do weekly. It makes me look not, I would say listening to a podcast while doing it actually makes me look forward to doing it. Like, because imagine like what are the things I could be doing instead of chores? I could be watching TV or playing video games. It seems like podcasts and books are the only thing that don't inhibit me from those tasks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's understandable.
Because I just have a hard time focusing on boring shit.
Right.
So
Yeah, that
the
makes sense.
podcast help and books help me do that. Well, audiobooks help me do those things and not get unfocused about them. I know it sounds weird. As I
No.
don't know. I don't know if I have ADD or not. Because sometimes I'll get unfocused and I'll just think a thought and then I'll look up whatever that thought is online and then I'll go down like some weird internet rabbit hole for like 20 minutes instead of
Oh, okay.
washing dishes.
Oh, okay.
So usually the podcasts and audiobooks help me avoid doing that.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. If it prevents you from a more time-consuming distraction.
Yeah. And you can always do something while you're, I guess the only problem is when you're doing something that needs cognitive access to your language center, as
Yeah,
that would inhibit podcasts and audiobooks would inhibit you from doing any tasks that require that of you.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, like, if someone's talking to you while you have a podcast going on in your ear, you can only pay attention to one of those things.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense.
it's definitely a balancing act.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right. So, do you want to go ahead and wrap it up?
Sure. Well, um, I guess I'll say what I usually like to say at the end of my videos, and then you can say all the stuff for Mixed Mental Arts. So thanks everyone for watching another episode of Mindgasms and also Mixed Mental Arts, because this is a swap cast. And um, I hope you found this episode about the Wheel of Time as interesting as we did. And if you're a fan of the series, hopefully it was informative and interesting to you. And if not, maybe it'll uh, ignite your curiosity enough to get into the series because it's awesome. And like I always say at the end of my videos, love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. And oh, yeah, also, thanks to everyone who likes and shares this video, and especially to those of you who contribute to me on Patreon. And I'll put that link in the description for this as well, like I always do. And yeah, and keep having mindgasms, of course. And what you want to say all the plugs for Mixed Mental Arts there, Dusty?
Yeah, sure. Make sure you check out Mixed Mill Arts on Facebook. That's where we have most of our discussions. We do have a Twitter account. Follow that. You can follow the Instagram account as well. I know Hunter has announced that they're going to start picking up the podcast again soon, since I think Brian is ending filming this season soon of Schooled, which is the series that he had been working on, and primary reason we were on hiatus because he was super busy with that. Um, Also, thank you very much, Patreon members, for supporting us at Mixed Mental Arts. For next week, my plan is we're going to talk about media literacy, and I
Cool.
hope everyone can join us about how to be a better critical thinker when it comes to picking your sources of information, which is very important in this day and age. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, and I think that's all the plugs I have for today.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and adios until next time.
See ya.